Please have a seat. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Before we call the meeting to order, I want to introduce a special guest that's going to be here at a county board meeting today. And that's Amy Resop, the legislative liaison for Ron Johnson. So she's attending the meeting today, sitting in the back. Would you please stand and wave? Thanks for coming. Okay, we'll call this Waupaca County Board of Supervisors meeting to order today, which is Tuesday, August 20th, 2019. It is just a little bit past 9. We can press our roll calls.
There you go. Need some help, Supervisor Murphy? If I get out, just like when your mother does it, ready? All of a sudden you behave. And Supervisor else just let him.
Joe, we're getting a flash that we're disconnected from the.
You know, I did that before and I just connected and it says I'm connected. Can you? Yeah, okay. I apologize. I don't know.
Mr. Ellis, do you want to press your roll call button, please? Thank you.
24 present, 2 excused, 1 vacant.
Clerk Luttawagen, has the open meeting statement been fulfilled legally?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. Let's please stand for silent meditation and then the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the
flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, is there someone out there that'd like to approve the agenda as presented? Supervisor Mork.
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
There is a motion by Supervisor Mork for approval of the to approve the agenda. There's a second. Mr. Ellis.
I second the motion.
And a second by Mr. Ellis. Any questions or comments? Discussion? Seeing none, let's vote.
Last chance to vote. That motion carries.
Likewise, we need to approve the minutes of the July 16th, 2019 meeting. Do we have a motion for approval? Mr. Quisman.
I'll make that motion, sir.
Motion by Mr. Quisman for approval and Supervisor Lair.
Second.
And a second by Supervisor Lair. Any comments or questions? Let's vote.
Last chance to vote. That motion carries.
Okay, ordinances and amendments to the General Court of Ordinances. A is 2019-677, amendment to the Chapter 34, petition number Z-011-19. Town of Dayton, Emil E. Peterson, and Wendy L. May for a zoning map amendment to apply for RR district to parcels previously zoned entirely as AWT district.
Okay, so the situation here is what they're trying to do is they own two parcels. They own this parcel here and the parcel next door. And what they're looking at doing is getting them both zoned the same district so that they can do a boundary line adjustment.
Mr. Fredowitz? There's a motion by Mr. Fredowitz for approval. Supervisor Golding,
I second it.
and a second by Supervisor Golding. Discussion? Do we have any questions? Let's vote.
That's on camera. Last chance to vote? That motion carries.
Item B is a 2019-678 amendment to Chapter 34, petition number Z-012-19, Town of Little Wolf, Corey M. Jawart, for a zoning map amendment to apply for the RR-0 district, maybe it's RR-O district, district to parcels of previously zoned entire AE district.
Yep, it's RRO, yeah, rural residential overlay.
Tongue twister.
A little bit, yeah. So what they're looking at doing is they're separating out the buildings here from the rest of the cropland. You can see that it's a bit of an irregularly shaped lot. That's because they have their septic field is a bit of an issue. They want to make sure they get it on there, and they also want to maximize the cropland with their buildings. So you can see they follow along the crop line. This isn't farm preservation, so that's why they're using that designation of rural residential overlay, and they're using one development right to create this lot.
Supervisor Zog,
I move we approve.
there's a motion by Supervisor Fred Zog for approval. Mr. Nygaard,
Second.
and a second by Mr. Jim Nygaard. Questions or discussion? Please vote.
Last chance to vote? Motion carries.
Resolutions. Resolution number 12, 2019-20, court fee and costs and probates and juvenile.
Now therefore be it resolved that the Waupaca County Board of Supervisors does hereby support the Wisconsin Register Probate Association in their effects to revise the Wisconsin State statutes consistent with the resolution, and further urges the legislature to review and amend the related statute to further consistency between the fee structures outlined in the statutes. Be it further resolved that the county clerk is directed to send a copy of this resolution to Governor Tony Evers, the Wisconsin Counties Association, Waupaca County's elected state representatives, and to each Wisconsin county.
Supervisor Gerald Murphy,
Move to approve resolution number 12.
okay, there is a motion by Supervisor Gerald Murphy for approval. Do we have a second? Supervisor Mork,
I second that motion.
and a second by Supervisor Mork. Any discussion? Any questions? Let's vote.
Sorry, it's not giving me my tally, so one moment. Well, we had an upgrade to the system. Can you tell that?
There.
Pull it up over here on me. What the heck?
Does this have a warranty?
Well, now it's into user error okay, last chance to vote. And that motion carries.
Okay, we have another resolution to look at here as resolution number 13. 13, 2019-20, cost of appointed counsel.
Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Waupaca County Board of Supervisors does authorize the payment of court-appointed legal services at a rate of $100 per hour for services completed on or after January 1st, 2020, notwithstanding the fact counsel was appointed before January 1st, 2020, effected upon passage by the county board.
Supervisor Zog,
I move we approve resolution 13.
there's a motion by Supervisor Zog for approval. Supervisor Questman,
I'll second that.
and a second by Supervisor Questman. Discussions or questions? Supervisor Craig.
Thank you. In reading through all of the material that was sent to us, I have some questions on, I did not see the economic impact to the county as it's going to be if we raise it from $70 to $100. In other words, how many people needed use of this in 2018? How difficult was it for us to find attorneys at that rate? What was the total cost paid, and what is the projected amount that we're expected to pay? And in that regard, I would also add that Wisconsin Counties Association has on its convention coming up resolutions number 66 through 69, which deal with the public defender and raising this cost to the $100 and things. And what they generally are saying is they would like the legislature to come back with some of the money to fund this mandate that is being put upon us by the state Supreme Court. So who knows the answers to those questions?
Counsel?
I didn't write your questions down. Perhaps Heidi has the figure for expenditures in 2018. I can tell you that that is a fluid number because we don't know how many folks are going to be convicted of a crime who are not, charged with a crime, needing representation, who are not public defender eligible. So to be public defender eligible, they have an income asset test. So if they're eligible for public defender appointment, they'll get appointment of counsel through the public defender's office. But the folks can request, folks who are charged with crimes can request court-appointed counsel if they're not public defender eligible. And there's a process that the court goes through to determine whether or not they will receive court-appointed counsel. Essentially, sort of a middle ground of you're poor enough essentially to be public defender eligible, but you don't have enough disposable income to maintain your necessaries and also pay for court-appointed counsel. So there's a process that the court goes through. What that number is or will be projected in the future is unknown because we don't know how many defendants will be in this category of potentially eligible for court-appointed counsel. So it's fluid. The genesis of this change is the Supreme Court rule. So essentially the Supreme Court, which governs court operations statewide and all the circuit court, said you must raise it from $70 to $100 effective January 1st. So what this resolution does is memorializes the Supreme Court rule into our resolution and clarifies that if court-appointed counsel started a case in 2019, they'll be paid the lower rate in 2019, and then they'll be paid the higher rate in 2020. In terms of whether or not it's difficult to get attorneys at the $70 rate, it is. It's very difficult to have folks who are willing to accept a $70 rate on court-appointed counsel for these court-appointed counsel cases. So in terms of the actual struggles that the courts are seeing, I don't participate in that decision, but I know anecdotally that it is difficult. And are there other questions that I haven't touched that you asked?
Just what did it cost us last year?
That I don't know. Heidi, do you have? Yeah.
Okay.
The other piece with court-appointed counsel is that there is a collection process. So if folks are employed, the courts will do an immediate withholding to their wages at a monthly rate, so they start paying back that hourly rate that's being charged by the attorney. And also the clerk of court's office, you've heard Clerk Two's talk about the SDC, the collections unit, the state collections unit is very successful in collecting that debt that's owed to the county. So it's not a one-way street. There's a potential repayment. Some folks might not repay, but the county makes every effort to collect money both ongoing and then after the case is concluded. So that also adds to the fluidity of what the actual net cost is to the county, which is unknown.
Second question.
Pardon me?
Can I have my second question ready?
Sure.
Thank you. When I read through the multitude of pages that you gave us, both of what the Supreme Court said, and when I got to Justice Daniel Kelly and what he had said for the dissenting vote, which means he wasn't in the majority, I find myself agreeing with what he said. And I would simply like to quote some of the things that he said in his argument for dissension. And I totally understand both sides. I understand why we need it. I understand why they have to get paid more. I understand the circumstances. I read through that Supreme Court rule, the whole thing. But this is what Justice Kelly said. Compensation for attorneys appointed by the court to represent indigent criminal defendants is absurdly inadequate. And so he goes on and he says, so when we tell Wisconsin counties to pay for the attorneys we appoint, meaning the Supreme Court, we are trespassing on authority that belongs to others. We know and have known for over 200 years that the power of the purse belongs to the legislature, not us. Our Constitution follows these principles by entrusting the spending power to the legislature. And again, he reiterates pages down that only the legislature may make appropriations, but when we tell counties to pay the attorneys we appoint, we are exercising that power. Not only does our rule trespass on the authority to appropriate funds, we don't even engage in an analysis of all the considerations that drive taxing and spending decisions. We bypass all the weighing, the compromises, the triaging, the prioritization, and simply announce that the county's top priority is paying appointed counsel. When we issue an order, we expect it to be obeyed. So he said he's not insensible to the fact that Wisconsin's judiciary has been ordering counties to pay for appointed counsel for almost as long as we have been its state, but he feels that the judiciary cannot expand its authority into the legislative domain through adverse possession or the legislature's long acquiescence. And when I went to the resolutions from Wisconsin counties, I will again say that they agree with the principle, but they want the legislature to give us, the counties, the money to fund this. And so for that reason, I think it's important that we follow along. If we simply say we're going to pay it, then why should the legislature give us money back? We've already agreed to pay it. It's coming out of our budget. So for that reason, I do not agree with this resolution. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Craig. Any other questions or discussion? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. The motion carries 14-10.
Okay, next we have resolution number 14, 2019-20, disaster proclamation.
Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Waupaca County Board of Supervisors that the disaster proclamation executed by the County Board Chair is hereby ratified, and the period of emergency shall be limited to the time during which the emergency conditions exist or are likely to exist.
Supervisor Johnson?
I move to approve.
A motion by Supervisor Johnson for approval, Supervisor Spearings,
I'll second that motion.
and a second by Supervisor Spearings. Questions or discussion?
Supervisor Craig, did you have or were you trying to second?
I was trying to second, but I'll have a comment.
Okay.
I think it's really important that our chairman signed this, because in the town of Royalton and surrounding townships, there were many, many trees down that the municipalities are responsible for getting off of our roads. And I know that our highway and the sheriff's department and everybody pitched in to try and get them off the road. And so it sounds like we might be getting some of this money back from FEMA, which is what we need to be able to help us in this time of disaster. Thank you.
Is Andy still here? I have a question for Andy. This morning on the radio, on WTCH radio, they were talking about counties that were going to probably be eligible for funds. And it went Shawano out of Gamey, and we never mentioned Waupaca. I was hoping I would just,
I have no idea why they didn't.
Okay.
I don't know how many counties are in it, but there's quite a few counties.
okay.
I think we're the farthest south, and then it goes to our west. It's Portage and Wood and Clark County, all the way up through Barron County.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, good,
And
thank you.
I think Oneida County is about the north part of it.
Okay. Well, being the Shawano radio station, maybe they just like to leave Waupaca out. I don't know.
Maybe we'll go talk to them at your show.
Talk to them tomorrow.
Jack Spearing. Jack, did you want to speak again?
Jack?
I guess I gotta say, I gotta agree with this, because city of Waupaca got hit pretty hard too. And with our small public works department, there's just no way they could do it. We had to call in a lot of help from just about any place we could get it from. And last night at our council meeting, we basically approved the same thing, because we applied for disaster help too.
We had 11 towns, 5 cities, 1 village, and 2 co-ops. In order for us to qualify for FEMA, we had to be over $192,000 in damage countywide, and we're at just under 1.3 million right now, just for our county. Statewide, we had to be over $8 million in damage, and they like a buffer in there, you know, a couple million more than that. I heard statewide we're around 20 million, maybe just a little over 20 million statewide, and most of it's debris cleanup stuff.
Okay, any other questions? As long as Andy's up here. Seeing none, let's vote.
Supervisor Kussman, I got it, okay. Last chance to vote. The motion carries.
Okay, let's just go down to reports. The 2018 annual financial report by Heidi Dombrowski. Morning, Heidi.
Morning. On your desk this morning, you'll have you have 2 documents: the management communications and the actual annual financial report. I'm going to summarize the information that the auditors have prepared and the management communications as part of the presentation. So I won't go through these 2 big reports for you to save on time a little bit. Not that the information in these reports are extremely important for you to have access to. We'll try to summarize some of that information. Clifton Larson Allen was at the Finance Committee last week, Wednesday. They are our auditors. Paul Dennis and Greg Patel were representations of our audit firm to the Finance Committee to kind of review the same information. And I'm here to follow up on that presentation to you. Is pages 1 through 5 of the management communications is their communication to you about the audit. Some of the key management communications is this, as far as significant audit findings, there were no audit findings on the 2018 financials. The financial statements themselves, there were no deficiencies in internal control over financial reporting that are considered to be of material weakness. And the federal and state awards, the audit did not identify any deficiencies in internal controls over compliance that are considered to be of material weakness. Some of the other items that they addressed or commented on were all transactions have been recognized in the financial statements in the proper period. There were no difficulties in dealing with management and performing and completing the audit. Management did not identify, and audit did not notify management of any uncorrected financial statement misstatements. And there were no disagreements that arose during the course of the audit. So with that all being said, the financials are good, in good format for you to understand that. From the financial standpoint, on page 6 of the management communications, it talks about the governmental fund balances. And if you look at the bottom of that page, the total governmental fund balances it was at 20.8 at the close of 12/31/17, down to 16.5 at the close of 2018. So I just kind of want to review those fund balances with you to just kind of refresh your memory as to what happened in 2018. Oops. The general fund itself had excess of revenue over expenditures of about $1 million. In the general fund, we transferred to the capital projects fund about $1.2 million, where we had budgeted, the actual final budget was 1.7. We actually only transferred 1.2, so that was $482,000 to the good. We transferred out of the general fund to the debt service fund almost $2.9 million to pay off the 2011 A series. We also transferred $500,000 to the transportation services fund for deficiency in that fund. The nursing home operations, we closed that fund, and with that, we brought over $484,560 for a net change in the general fund balance, a decrease of $3.1 million. The general fund is the main operating fund of the county, so I just kind of wanted to talk to you about the fund balance. Our policy is that we would have 25% of our operating revenues within our fund balance. At the close of the year, we had an unassigned fund balance of just over $8 million, and that was over our policy of $1.4 million. Now remember, in 2019, we did a budget amendment to utilize $670,000 of that for that E91 communication system, which then the estimated over policy is about $780,000 at this point. Health and Human Services utilized fund balance of about $448,000. Of their fund balance, approximately $114,000 is restricted, mostly in the area of donations, and the remaining $2.5 million is committed for the use of Health and Human Services. That's on page 11, Exhibit 6 of your financial statements. The Transportation Services Fund in your financial statements is page 12, Exhibit 7. We had, because in 2018 we did not borrow for highway construction projects, we had originally budgeted to utilize fund balance of about $2.1 million in that fund. We ended up utilizing $2.3 million, and that's why we had the transfer from the general fund to the Transportation Services Fund of $500,000. So the net change in that fund balance actually was a decrease of $1.8 million. The ending fund balance remains at almost $492,000. $111,493 is committed for bridge aids, and the remainder $380,072 is just for maintenance and construction in upcoming years. And that fund balance should remain a little bit higher than that, so we'll have to kind of regroup to increase that fund balance over the period of time to get a more stable fund balance in that area. We have all the other special revenue funds. This is Economic Development Corp. Fund, the Environmental TIF program, and the Environmental program. There's three that make up these funds. There's no levy support in these. This fund balance increased, and these three funds, almost 116,000 for a fund balance ending at 456,330. Of that amount, $473,633 is restricted for economic development loans. However, that fund will be closed here in 2019, or was closed in 2019. And that was a process that happened at County Board a few months ago. So those are the other special revenue funds. The Capital Improvement Fund, this is on page 60 of your annual financial report, Exhibit 17. This fund had a deficiency of $1.5 million. We had anticipated almost a $3 million deficit in this fund balance, or fund balance usage, I should say. In here, we had budgeted to transfer from the general fund approximately $1.7 million as the final budget, and we actually transferred $1.2 million, which was about 480. We saw that on the general fund, 482,000 less than what we had anticipated. So really that had to do with the courthouse improvement project, that we didn't need as much funding for that as what we had originally anticipated. And then we transferred a little bit from the environmental program fund for a capital project that was in the capital improvement fund. And then from the nursing home fund, we transferred $1.2 million to support the courthouse improvement that occurred in 2018. This fund balance is ending with $1 million, just over $1 million. And this is really for those projects that we had budgeted for in 18 that weren't completed in 18, that will have to be completed here in 19. A lot of that had to do with the tower project that was not completed in 18 and kind of carried over into 19. So that makes up a majority of that fund balance. The debt service is kind of the big story this year, as you all know. We had final budget was operating of a $6 million deficit. With that, because we had retired that 11 debt, we transferred about $2.9 million from the general fund and $3.2 million from highway operations fund. So that fund balance increased by $505 at the end. Really that had to do with what we had anticipated for our interest payment on that final payoff was a little bit less than what we had originally anticipated. So that fund balance has an $2,400 in it, and that can be utilized for future debt service payments. Overall, our governmental fund balances are still remaining strong. You can see this is all of those funds combined into one. So you can see it, the net change in fund balance overall was about 4.3 decrease. But it's also encouraging that we retired over $6 million in debt service. So that is pretty much the significant impact there. Of that, we have about 15.49% or $2.6 million that's non-spendable, and the remaining 84.51% is considered to be spendable. 48.45% or $8,002,518 is our unassigned fund balance. The other areas are restricted, committed, or assigned for other purposes. But that's the governmental fund, kind of in a nutshell as to what happened in 18 and why you're seeing that decreases in fund balance. Nothing to be alarmed on, just we made some different decisions that affected that fund balance. Are there any questions on the governmental funds? Okay. So on page 7 of your management communications, this is what the significant results kind of hit on all of them through the presentation. The auditors indicated that the unassigned fund balance it has met or exceeded the fund balance policy since 2012. The currently at 8 million and exceeds the minimum by approximately 1.3 million. Now I'll address this next result on the next slide, where our self-funded workers' compensation and our health insurance or medical claims has experienced positive experience for 2018. And shown on 95 of the page 95 of the financial report, the general obligation debt in the governmental activities has been reduced from a high of 40.5 million in 2011 to 13.2 million in 2018. This reduction has allowed the county to finance a new highway facility with minimal impact on the tax rate. And then I just added, as of December 31st, 2018, our total general obligation debt is $37,325,000. And that includes both governmental activity and business type activity. Business type activity, highway operations. On the, one of the comments that were made in the management communication on page 11 is consideration of the self-insurance reserves. The county is self-insured for workers' compensation and health insurance. And these two graphs show what the auditors are recommended or have indicated as your optimal reserve balance. And then the green line up above is indicating where that reserve currently is at. And we had responded to this comment indicating that for 2019 or for 2020 budget year or 19 budget year and beyond, we would maintain the health insurance premiums until that health insurance reserve has been reduced to a more optimal level. And in addition, we will be recognizing setting that workers' comp, and a portion of that workers' comp to an assigned fund balance for any claims for future periods. So this is a really good situation that the county is in on our self-insurance. And so we will be looking at that carefully during the 2020 budget process to see if there is some additional areas that we can take into consideration with these two areas of self-insurance. Lastly is the business type activities, and the 2018 financials eliminated or we closed the nursing home fund. So the only business type activity that we have remaining within the county is highway operations. So page 8 of the management communications indicates that the highway operations had an operating income of $241,000 as compared to $391,000 from the previous year. There is no direct tax levy for the highway operations for 2018. On page 9 of management communications, this just shows the different areas and where that operating result occurred. And in the bottom, you note that the operating income of $241,000 as compared to the $391,000 in 2017. The highway fund continues to generate a positive net position. Capital assets purchased were $5.6 million, which exceeds the depreciation charge of $860,000. However, the highway fund retains $22.4 million in cash at December 31st, 2018. Approximately $19 million is available for the new highway building. And I put together a slide to kind of explain this a little bit. So in 2017, this was their operating cash. So at the end of the year, they had $4.4 million at the end of 2017 in operating. Then as you see in 2018, I have 4 columns. The first column is the close of operating in 18. Remember, we transferred $3.2 million to pay off that debt service. So their operating cash decreased from 4.4 down to 1.4. So there is some operating cash increase with that, even with that 3.2 decrease. The general obligation debt that's outstanding is about $19,666,493. Of that, because we issued 24,125,000, and they have 4.4 construction in progress with some interest earnings down below and some debt service costs, which is that's the balance as of 12/31/18, which will now be spent down here in 19, and then the debt service payments will continue on forward. The bond premium is another portion of that debt issue. We received about a $1,273,583 in bond premium, and those funds will be utilized to pay debt service interest in 18 and a portion of 19's interest payment. So that's where their $22.4 million cash balance is, how that kind of breaks out, how their cash balance, what that means, and that close of 12/31/2018. So the things are going to look a little bit different moving forward with this new building. So just kind of want to call out what their operating piece is. That's all I have.
Questions? Supervisor Fedowitz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just again want to state, like I did in the Finance Committee, I would like to commend the department heads and when they put together their budgets to make this work, and also to Heidi and her department for the job well done, especially echoed by the individuals giving their report to us from an auditing standpoint.
Thank you, Mr. Fedowitz. Supervisor Nygaard?
Yeah, I'd like to compliment them too on the excellent audit report. I'm just wondering where does the county invest funds? Are you able to invest funds in the meantime to make a little interest on anything, or?
Are you talking debt service or overall?
Overall.
Overall, the county treasurer handles all of the investments for the county, and yes, it's kind of spread throughout. There's some within CDs, there's some within WISC. If they're local banks, non-local banks, it's kind of spread all over. Really good investments. Our bond proceeds are actually, which you'll see coming in the 2020 budget, the bond proceeds are also invested with WISC. They manage that and track all the arbitrage associated with the bond issue, and that's actually experienced well above what we had anticipated at the time of the issuance. So those funds will have also any interest earnings on that could be utilized to help that debt service payment in 2020.
Thank you.
I have to add too that Mark gives the Finance Committee every monthly report on the investments, where they are, what they're bringing in. He keeps a pretty close tab on that and does an excellent job. Anybody else? You're still flashing, Mr. Nygaard.
Yeah, I don't know.
There we go. Okay. Thank you very much, Heidi.
Thank you.
We go to our counselor, Diane Millemans, for Child Support Agency report.
Good morning, everyone. You'll
Good
see
morning.
me wearing my other hat at the podium. So in addition to being the corporation counsel for the county, I'm the administrator of the child support program. So you get to learn a little bit about the child support program this morning, who we are, what we do, and how we generate collections for the children of Waupaca County. So I'm the administrator of the child support program. Assistant Corporation Counsel Dave Bean primarily handles the casework, and I'm secondary to him if he's on vacation or has conflicts. Together we set all the legal policies for the program as guided by the Bureau of Child Support, and when left to our discretion as we decide. We have 4 child support specialists. They all do exactly the same thing, but they have the same tasks, but they have incredible amount of independent judgment in how they manage their cases and making decisions on their individual case participants. And then we have 1 administrative assistant. So together, the 7 of us work together as a team to make the child support program work. We are, it flows from the Office of Child Support Enforcement. Guidance and administrative policies come from the federal level. Funding for the program, some of the funding for the program comes from the federal government, and that's administered and managed by the state Wisconsin Department of Children and Families through the Bureau of Child Support, and then the county is delegated to actually deliver the program services. And Jill has a video for us. If you would start a little bit, we'll watch YouTube this morning together.
We understand that you may have questions about the child support program. What is it, and how does it work? Basically, child support is payments that one parent makes to either the child's other parent or legal guardian to help with the costs of raising a child. Parents and guardians can receive services from their local child support office. Here are the top services the program offers. Open a child support case. Locate the other parent. Establish parentage. Establish a support order. Set up payment. Enforce the support order. And review the order. To open a child support case, you'll need to complete an application with your local child support office. And if you receive help from the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program, also referred to as TANF, check with your local child support office to see if a child support case is already open. The first thing we need to know is where the other parent lives or works. There's no guarantee we'll find the other parent, but the more information you provide, like the other parent's date of birth and social security number, the easier it'll be. After we find the parent, then we can establish parentage, if it hasn't already been established. Next, we can establish the child support order and determine the amount of payment. We use child support guidelines to calculate how much a parent should contribute to the child's financial support. If you already have a child support order, we don't need to establish a new one. The most common way we set up payment is to deduct the payment from the parent's paycheck and distribute the money to the other parent or guardian. It's an easy way to make and keep a record of child support payments. When the parent doesn't pay the full amount or doesn't pay at all, we use enforcement remedies like withholding child support from paychecks, unemployment, or workers' compensation benefits, intercepting income tax refunds, and reporting delinquent child support payments to credit reporting bureaus. Either parent can ask their local child support office to review their child support order 3 years after the order is set. They can also request a review before the 3 years if they experience substantial changes in circumstances, like job loss or incarceration. We hope this answered some of your questions about child support. To learn more, contact your state or tribal child support office. Produced by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services at taxpayer expense.
Thank you, Jill. So clearly that was YouTube videos made by the Office of Child Support Enforcement as sort of public information and for folks who are participating in child support program services. So the video talked about case management services, and if you are a family that has previously received public assistance, including Badger Care, the Child Care Subsidy, W-2, or Kinship Care, we get an automatic referral from the Economic Support Program. We start your case. We continue to do full management of your case. If your assistance case closes, you're still eligible for full management services. So we do the things that they talked about on the video. If there's a child born without an adjudicated, outside of a marriage, then we work to establish paternity for that child in an unmarried couple. We establish child support orders using child support guidelines, and those are set by both statute and administrative rules. So my staff needs to know all the laws and regulations that apply. We enforce the child support order in the ways that was said on the video. One of the other things that we can do is intercept lottery proceeds. So we had someone who was very happy who won $2,000 in the lottery, went to Madison and to pick it up, and they said, we used it to pay your child support costs. So here's your piece of paper, no money left on that. We locate parents for enforcement and establishment, and I refer to child support as the big brother of locate. We have electronic interfaces with state agencies such as unemployment insurance, the Department of Motor Vehicles, DILR, the Department of Labor. So if you are active in, have a driver's license, we can look to see what you're listing as your address to the Department of Motor Vehicles, and all of that is electronic interface. We also are in state new hires. Anytime somebody gets hired for a new job, the employer reports to the state. We get electronic notice of that, and we also get electronic notice of national new hires. So those post quarterly, a little bit delayed, but we can, you have to work pretty hard to stay, to be not located by the child support agency. Our staff also gets pretty creative in searching on the internet for folks, and people provide a lot of information openly about themselves on Facebook. So Facebook has been a source for us to find people, including we found somebody around the car show time who was posting a very fancy vintage car which had a license plate on it, which we could then look at the Department of Motor Vehicles to say where is the address. So we were able to find that person through Facebook. And as the video required or demonstrated, we must review child support every 33 months. But if there's a substantial change in circumstances, and we set that by county policy, then we also can review the child support to see if the number should go up or down. Either parent can request review. So if somebody thinks he or she is paying too much, they can say, can you look at it? Or if somebody thinks they're not getting enough, can you look at it? And sometimes the reverse result happens, where the person thinks he's paying too much or she's paying too much, gets to be paying more according to what the guidelines are. So. And we follow, like I said, regulations regarding that. So that's the full array of services that we provide when we get those referral for aid cases or former aid cases. You can also apply fill out our application for case management services. It's free. It's about 3 pages long, and we encourage everyone to do it. And I joke, if you complete these 3 pages, you get Dave as your free attorney. So, and I'm surprised that folks don't want to do that, but many folks don't. So right now we have 800-ish cases that receive limited case management services that they're in our non-4D pile. So those are, we do very minimal case management services for spousal cases or maintenance cases because we're the child support program. The money still has to flow through the trust fund, but we don't provide services where there are no children or there was never aid. You can apply for services, you get all the case management you want. If you don't apply for service or never had aid, essentially we stop and start your order. We'll build your case on our system. We'll send out the first income withholding. We don't do anything up or down. If the person moves employers, that the payer has to report that, and the employer has to do their own withholdings, and then we shut it off when it's done. So it's really a stop and start, very limited services. So we encourage everyone to apply, and then those actions are eligible in the 4D or benefit or former benefit caseload. We're in a program of federal financial participation. So we can be reimbursed on 4D case activity and very limited non-4D cases if we meet our performance milestones. So the state has established 5 performance measures. One is a statewide measure, so we don't talk about that. The four others are what I report on every week, every month to my committee in terms of how we're doing. 80% is the magic goal. And if we exceed 80% and there's extra money in the statewide pool, then they allocate on an incentive basis. So this is the revenue for the Child Support Agency, as you see us talking about this through the rest of the year. It's a fluid number. This year it will go down, anticipated to go down because we're spending less. So if we spend less, we get less reimbursement back. So it's a cause and effect. So the 4 performance standards that we're measured on is how well we establish court orders. So when that referral comes or when we get an application for services, do we have a case group that doesn't have an order, that we get a child support order? So we need it's the ratio of the percentage of cases with orders regarding against the total number of 40 cases on our caseload. We get a performance standard on establishing paternity for children. And that's the number of children, they take a snapshot, a number of children present on our caseload as of September 30th, that runs by the federal fiscal year, who need to have paternity established for them. And then throughout that fiscal year, how many paternity cases, how many children do we have paternity established for? The third one is collections, how well we do collections. So can we, on a monthly basis or a calendar year basis, collect 80% of the total child support due that's court ordered to be paid on our caseload? So we want to collect 80 cents on every dollar that's ordered to be paid. And then the fourth one is the arrears collection. So, and this is a federal standard. They want us to collect on federal debt. And this case is a little bit, or this standard is a little bit different, because if we collect $1 on in a particular federal case, that's a 100% for the year. So it's not a total due, it's a one hit, it equals 100%. And this is, you'll see the numbers, it's by far the hardest standard for us to reach. So how are we doing? So this is Waupaca County versus statewide. So paternity, we're not finding more children out there. So this is a snapshot. We're at 108.93 percentage. So because the snapshot of September 30th, obviously more kids have been born since September 30th than existed without paternity as of September 30th. So that's why it's more than 100%. We're not finding 2 fathers for some of the children. And the court order rate, so again, this is how many cases we get court orders established. So not more than 9 out of 10. If they're on a caseload, we get our orders established. We collect more than 80 cents on the dollar. So right now we're at 82.02% on the dollar. Again, comparison to the state, all of our performance measures are higher than the statewide percentages. So we're doing well. And the arrears collection rate, we're inching up to 80%. We've had some improvements. About in the beginning of the year, we start out at about 32%. So again, $1 is 100%. So this is, and it will run out. Our ability to get 80% will end at the end of September. So we're close to the end of our federal fiscal year to get our 80%. So how many cases do we have? So we have a total of 3,116 cases. So those are open cases. And we divide the 4D caseload, so the aid and former aid cases, by the payer's last name. So the person who handles A through EZ, she has 535 cases assigned to her to do all that range of management that we talked about at the beginning. The second, 568 cases for the F through L's. The L's through R's, 576, and the R through Z's, 557. So in the 884, those are the spousal only or the non-applied for services cases, and those 884 are assigned to me to manage. So I get activity on those cases. So I'm in a caseload as well. When there's actual management steps or action steps that need to be taken, then I ask the specialist who's on the payer in those cases, who falls into that alpha split, to work with the employers and do things like that. So, but I'm managing when actions need to be taken, then I get the information and then delegate it to the other staff. So it's a lot of work for the 7 of us. So what do we collect? So year to date, almost $5 million. Yep. So in our average monthly collection, $712,484.44. So how have we done historically? hanging in the world of 8.3 million consistently over the last 4 years. So again, it's they want us to collect 80 cents on the dollar. We're a little bit higher than that, so it's $8.3 million as of last year. And I always give a couple fun facts about child support. This is the statute of limitations on child support collections. So I frequently talk to parents, the receiving parent, to say, I'm owed a lot of money. What happens when my child emancipates? Well, we can hang around that pair and try to collect for 18 or 19 more years after the youngest child emancipates. So we're in there, and we had a woman call whose youngest child was 41. So just outside the statute of limitations, and we said, it's run, we can't do anything for you anymore because of statute of limitations. But we've had children in their late 30s, and we're still trying to collect on the support obligation. And we can withhold through the Social Security Administration, so we can tap into retirement benefits and disability benefits to pay child support as folks payers age. Yep. And then the Bureau of Child Support also has become more participant friendly, where any case participant can create a user account on the Wisconsin Child Support online services. And it's just like seeing your bank account online. So you can see money coming in, you can see where it's coming from, you can see when it's dispersed, to whom it's dispersed, you can see what your balances are due. You can print a payment coupon, so you can print it off and send your payment in. You can make payments online. You can get information about the other fees and costs that may be charged on your case. So really user-friendly. Right now it's only on the internet, but they're making a version they're not calling it an app, but it's small screen friendly. So you can do it on your phone and see, any participant can see his or her child support payment history, just like a bank account. And all of that is electronic withholding and electronic disbursement. So we disperse out to debit cards. So there's not paper checks in the mail. So that's all I have for you today. A little bit of information about the child support program. I'd be happy to take questions. I was going to provide a picture of the staff, but everybody's on vacation. I couldn't get everybody together at the same time in the last 2 weeks. So, yes.
Supervisor Questman.
On behalf of the Legislation and Judicial Committee, I'd like to thank you for your great leadership.
Yep. You're welcome.
And we appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. In your packet, too, there's this document. This is something that's created by the Federal Office of Child Support Enforcement. Their famous stat is for every $5.14 of child support that's collected, only $1 is spent on costs, and I think our ratio is better than that in terms of $8.3 million of collections per year, and I think we're about $300,000 to fund the program on levy. Thank you for your time.
Supervisor Lair.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, Diane.
Yes.
In the Clintonville paper and in the Waupaca paper, it says here, and you might have touched on it, there are also judicial remedies if parents refuse to make payment. What are they?
Jail.
Okay.
So we can use the civil contempt process. So the person can be sanctioned. It's not a sentence. Sanctioned to jail for up to 6 months for intentional and willful noncompliance of the child support order, and there can be a fine to establish up to $10,000, I believe. But we look for jail time. And we do progressive sanctions. So if the first time somebody's non-compliant, we would ask for the person to serve for 30 days. If that doesn't right the ship, the person sits the 30 days, comes out, still isn't paying, we start for to double that. So we want to get people's attention. The goal is not to place people in custody. The goal is to get payment to the family. So that's what we're trying to do, is get payment to families.
And if you could clarify, it says Malman said the statute of limitations for child support enforcement is 20 years. It can continue until the youngest child is 39 years old. I think you touched on it.
Yeah. Yep. 20 years after the child turns 18 or 19. Yeah. So the payer has to pay if the child turns 18 but is still in high school until the graduation. And if the person is still in high school but not graduated, the absolute cutoff is 19. So 20 years after the 19th birthday or 20 years after the 18th birthday if they're not in high school.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Supervisor Craig?
Yeah, maybe I misspoke about that in the slide. Thank you.
You talked about what we can do for Wisconsin. What happens, is it national too? In other words, if the parent is in Illinois or Minnesota or Wyoming or California or Florida, can we follow them there, and do those states also collect and send things to us?
Yes. So there is the Uniform Interstate Family Support Act. So UIFSA is the federal legislation. So if we are the court of jurisdiction, so Waupaca County Court enters a child support order, we find our paying parent is in Tennessee, we can do one of two things. We can directly send a withholding to that person's employer in Tennessee or wherever he or she is. So we maintain control of the case, and the withholding captures the money, sends it to the Wisconsin Trust Fund, and then disperse it out to the receiving parent. So that's a direct connection with an out-of-state parent. But if we can't do that, we can reach out to the other state to say, can you help us? Other state, the respondent who we need to have action regarding lives in your state, and we can ask them to establish paternity. We can ask them to establish a child support order. We can ask them to modify a child support order, and we can ask them to enforce a child support order. And the same thing, other states can do the reverse. They can send their cases to us and ask us to take actions on their behalf. So, and that is all of those, the 550-ish cases that each of the specialists has, each of them do these interstate type cases, and each of them has 20 to 25 interstate cases that they're also managing within that within their caseload. So they are very complicated. The interstate just within the last 2 weeks turned on an electronic document exchange. So there's a central cloud-based system where states can go in, upload orders and documents, and the other state can go in and capture them and print them. We used to have to mail everything and certified copies, and it was quite cumbersome. Because if you're collecting 20 years after the child turns 18, the cases can get really big, and there can be a lot of orders. So yes, so the states ask each other to help on an interstate basis. Mm-hmm. Good
Any
question.
other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Okay, in my report, I was going to talk about the event coming up at Rawhide, but talking to Peter Bosquez, he knows more about it than I do. I'm going to ask him to come up here and say what I wanted to say. Microphone. Pete lives near there, and he knows he's got the knowings of what's happening.
Morning, everybody.
Morning.
The program the chairman's talking about is the Bart Starr celebration of his life. It's a 3-day event. The first event's at the stadium on Friday. Saturday's the Rawhide event, and then third one is during halftime of the first game. So Saturday, September 14th, from noon to 4:30, they're having the program out at Rawhide. They're going to have current and former players out there. They're going to have like a little football camp that they can do out there. They're going to have a few other things. For adults, they're going to have tours of Rawhide and some of the houses that the boys stay at. Then Mrs. Starr is going to give a speech. Bart Jr. is going to give a speech. I think they're going to have 2 or 3 former players that played with Bart speak also. And Larry McCarron, I believe, is going to be the MC for the whole thing. So what Rawhide did, because I've been working with them as a neighbor to try and improve their image and the how they get along with the neighbors, the closer neighbors when kids run away and stuff like that. They asked me to be part of that. And then because of that, they asked me to be part of this program, setting this whole thing up and working with the sheriff's department and everybody to make sure it's safe, because Caledonia also has their Caledonia days that day with the parade. And so we had to find some tricky routes so we can minimize the safety risk out there. So I was at the meeting yesterday, and Rawhide has extended a special invitation to all the county board members to come on out. It's a free event for anybody. You can sign up online. You don't have to sign up, but they would just like kind of an estimate of how many people are going to be there. Right now, they're thinking about 5,000 people. So for my part, what I'm suggested is that if any of you guys want to come to the event, we can park in my yard. We'll park there, and then depending on the numbers, we'll get a shuttle to get us to Rawhide. Getting in there won't be the problem, but when everybody leaves at the same time, that's when the issue is going to come up. So I'm trying to minimize that for you guys. So we'll set a time, however many people want to go. Sign up, Jill, if you can just get a sign-up sheet, just let her know. And then I'll set things up from there and let everybody know what time. Because I'm thinking if we get there earlier, the better. I'm not sure how many of you would like to meet some of those former players and stuff, but from my understanding, they're going to get there a little bit earlier than everybody else. So we can do that. If there's any other suggestions, but I live really close, I'll get you a map. I'm like less than 2 miles away. The parking that they have off-site is 4 or 5 miles away and a little more difficult to get to and get out of once everybody starts leaving. So from my place, it's pretty much a straight shot out. So, so I'll help out as much as I can. I think that's about it for the program. So just let Jill know if you guys are interested, and then we'll figure a plan out to get everybody there that wants to go. There's limited seating. There's only about 500 chairs that are going to be there. So what they wanted is for you guys to know, so they'll get you guys in there, make sure you have a chair to sit on. So,
Pete, maybe we can work together on putting an invite together with all the details so they know before they sign up, maybe?
Okay.
If that's okay.
Good. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, Supervisor Vasquez. Very good. Okay, in my report, I attended our Wisconsin Wisconsin County Association Board of Directors meeting at Lambeau Field on Friday. We have it out generally around the state, but this time we had it at Lambeau Field on the 6th floor. And I'm sure some of you have been up there. It certainly is a palace. Last year, our mutual met on the 4th floor, but it seems the higher you go up, the better it gets in a lot of ways in life, I guess. But at any rate, it was a thing of beauty. Mark O'Connell talked about, and also Kyle Christian talked about the state budget. For many years, this is the most county-friendly budget for quite a while. He talked about the increase in transportation funds, which is so far behind, and really at 122 million, if we'd had normal increases in the last number of years, we'd be up to 160 million, which it should be. Got a lot of work to do, but things are going in the right direction. He also talked about just what you mentioned, Pat, that they've increased the attorney fees from 40 to 70. That's a plus. And also Mark O'Connell talked about the opioid lawsuits, which he's very, very confident that it's going to be good. Wisconsin, New York, and there's 3 states that are favorable: Wisconsin, New York, and Arkansas, because Wisconsin's only using 2 attorneys to attack for we 72 counties. Some states they got 25 different attorneys, and he thinks we're in the forefront for our case to come maybe by 2021, and he thinks that we should do okay. There's millions of dollars out there. In fact, he had mentioned that some of these companies are so sick of getting accused and they just want to know the figure, they want to pay off and get out. So they're out of it. So he said that was the last he heard. So those things are really good. Also, he said the governor had closed the dark store loopholes, which is really crippling Wisconsin, adding to we taxpayers on our regular homes tax burdens. But Mr. Voss, the Speaker of the Assembly, made sure that didn't happen. So that was very disappointing with Mr. Voss in the Assembly. He said he'll continue to work on that issue. Interestingly enough, about 11 o'clock, there's a knock on our meeting door up there, and in walks, you can't see that, but in walks Mark Murphy, the president of the Green Bay Packers. And he was with us for a good half hour, talked about the Green Bay Packers and how he sees it, and we were able to ask some questions. And he was much more interesting to listen to than when you see him on TV. He just is more of a down-to-earth athlete that used a lot of dugout talk that I am familiar with, can understand better, and so there's polite stuff on TV. I asked him, since number 12 is getting old and decrepit and hurt a lot, I'm sorry, Mandy, that is there a thing in the back of his mind that maybe we should be drafting a highfalutin #1 quarterback out of college and let him learn under Aaron? Like Aaron learned under the greatest quarterback of all time for about 4 years, Mandy? That's a thing between Mandy and I. She doesn't like Brett, but she's in love with number 12. But anyhow, he says, that's a good question. We really think that's going to be coming up soon when we should start thinking about it. However, he said with the new coach's offense and we running the ball a lot more and keeping him in the pocket and not in shorter passing, he shouldn't get hit so much anymore. So maybe we'll be able to play till 40. But he said we really should start thinking about that too. He talked about the new coach. Of course, he's new and he's a rookie. He said it's so refreshing to have a head coach that gets along with the GM, that gets along with all our scouting department. I don't know what he's getting at there, but he said we really are working as a family so far. The coaching staff and the GM and also the scout. But it was really quite interesting. He would just talk relaxed and wished us well and talk about the Lambeau Field, Titletown building complex out there. It's continuing to go. Of course, they got a big, massive clinic there now, Bellin Clinic, and they got this beautiful hotel, the only, rated 5 hotel in Clintonville. That's right across from Lambeau. And it's continuing building on. As I left Lambeau Field, there were cranes all over the place going right down the corridor from Lambeau Field. So that's all for my short report. Oh, by the way, Wisconsin County is doing very well. They had some financials and doing very well under Mark O'Connell as expected. And of course, Heidi Dombrowski does some work for Wisconsin counties, and she would know also give a better report than I would. And I think she agreed to sit on a board for a financing group, which many years ago, Heidi and I drove down to Madison and talked to Mark about this because he wanted to include Waupaca County, one of the few counties that are included in this, Heidi, right? Very few. We're very fortunate. So, with that being said, I don't have anything else. And we do want to thank the great treats from Supervisor Dwayne Fedowitz. Thank you, Dwayne. Is there anything else that we need to talk about?
I was just going to mention, as far as announcements and correspondence, the only thing that wasn't in the electronic packet was the booklet from WCA, and that was on your desk. So that's what this is.
Well, yeah, and of course, the conference is coming up too in the end of September. Keep that in mind. And if you're not registered and want to go, you better go. I was planning on it, but my back surgeon's got surgery for that Monday, and I can't go, fortunately, again. So, that being said, we need a motion to adjourn. Supervisor Zog?
Move we adjourn.
There's a motion by Supervisor Zog to adjourn. Do we have a second? Do we have a second? Supervisor Lair? second by Supervisor Laird to make sure we are going to get out of here. We are adjourned.